Ask Doug Feith about that when he comes here in 2 weeks.
Well, we shall. But, you know, speaking of Feith, many of the principal characters in your book aren't in their jobs now. They've gone on to write their own books.
Except for 2.
Except for 2. Right.
Well, don't forget Condoleezza. Don't forget Condoleezza Rice.
Right. So 3.
We got a promotion.
But where are some of them? Is it worth mentioning where any of them are? I mean, we know Rumsfeld is writing his own book, right?
Yeah, Feith, who will be here, has written his book.
Did you read his book?
I have not had the pleasure yet to read his 800-pound, 800-page, and God knows how many pounds.
And I think Colin Powell's in the garage, working on those Volvos. I mean, it's kind of impressive, kind of interesting, you know, that often Secretary of States leave and then they remain part of the public discourse in one way or the other. He's really taken a pass on that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think in the book we had one of the first interviews with him when on the record he talks about the UN speech, and he comes across as being, I would read it without being too psychological about it, as having feelings of guilt and shame.
Yeah.
Why is it always Colin Powell in the UN speech? Why do people keep asking about Colin Powell's speech?
Yeah.
You know, he doesn't feel too good about these things.
Another guy writing a book is Karl Rove.
Yes.
Your colleague at Newsweek, right?
My colleague at Newsweek. By the way, if I could inject some news into this discussion.
We always welcome news.
Was just in the news yesterday. I love like harmonic convergence of conspiracy theories. But
in your line of work, you better.
This is my favorite sort of thing. So yesterday, and I don't know if you caught this, but in the Tony Rezko trial in Chicago, a prosecutor gets up. You know, everybody thought, you know, Rezko's going to be all about, you know, is there going to be any ties to Obama? This is the thing. Prosecutor gets up and says they have a new witness who they want to testify. A man by the name of Atta, who they've just flipped, and that the guy is prepared to testify about a conversation with Rezko in 2004, in which Rezko told him about how a guy by the name of Bob Shalander, the Republican boss of Illinois, and a close buddy of Karl Rove's, the two of them were talking about getting Patrick Fitzgerald fired as the U.S. Attorney in Chicago in 2004.
Okay,
so this hooks up with the U.S. Attorney firings, and guess what's going on in 2004? The Valerie Plame investigation targeting Karl Rove being conducted by ... Patrick Fitzgerald, the U.S. Attorney.
So let me ask you this: is there any way that this?
So Rezko to Plame to Rove to the firing of the prosecutors.
But does Rezko then get taken away in some way from Obama and then given to McCain?
Well, Bob Shalander, the guy with whom Rove was supposed to have been having this discussion, and by the way, both Rove and Shalander deny it, but Shalander is the deputy in charge of the Republican convention in St. Paul that's going to nominate McCain. So we now have a tie-in to the Rezko trial with John McCain through Bob Shalander.
After all, so we've moved him out of the Obama column.
You can't even get 6 degrees of separation here. I think Kevin Bacon was at that meeting too.
Yeah. Now, what do you make of the Petraeus reassignment?
Well, I think what's interesting here is that, you know, he has been the front man for the war, and there's been some in Iraq, and there's been some tension between him and the commander of CENTCOM, which has a wider. And
who is that? Who is the current commander of CENTCOM?
Well, there is no, but
there is none.
Well, it was Fallon, but he was fired.
Okay, so it's an empty desk.
But Fallon's perspective was wider, and he was actually, you know, it said so in a Esquire piece and elsewhere that he was worried that Iraq was sucking up too many resources and was breaking the back of the military and getting in the way of other security imperatives. And so now you have the 180-degree flip here, where the guy who sees Iraq as the #1 priority is going to be in charge of this wider range of responsibilities, and one of two things is going to happen. Either he will, in this new job, reassess what's happening in Iraq because he will see things from the Fallonian perspective, or he will come in and push everything aside and focus on what has been his baby to date. But in some ways, it's it's pretty natural for Bush, who has put aside some of the advice from other members of the chain of command and has gone right to Petraeus and has made, basically he's outsourced the war to Petraeus by bypassing Fallon and others. Now that outsourcing becomes a little bit easier because he's taking away a level between him and Petraeus.
What does this mean to whoever becomes the next president? I mean, is this...
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the sort of 800-pound gorilla here because, I mean, nobody really... there is no strategy to for a graceful exit
is this
from
just
Iraq,
like,
and whoever
are they just running down the clock until the next guy?
The Bush White House is, but I mean, whoever of the three candidates becomes president is going to have a hell of a problem on their hands with no easy solution. And Obama and Hillary can talk all they want about how they're going to get out of end the war. They're not going to end the war. They're going to try to figure out a way to inherit the war, figure out a way to get American troops out as fast as possible without leaving behind a complete disaster that's going to have long-term national security implications for the United States.
McCain doesn't have a problem. Because he's basically said, "I'm just going to continue."
No,
that's what I mean.
No, it doesn't matter what he says now.
Well,
the question is 6 months into his administration,
exactly what's going to happen.
Americans are getting killed at the same rate they're getting killed now, and there's no end in sight. If that's the case, of course he's going to have a problem.
Well, that will be his problem. But he's already said. He has said nothing about changing strategies. He's set no expectations other than that we're going to stay the course and somehow we're going to win.
I personally think that's meaningless at this point because whoever becomes president is going to have to deal with the same core realities and is going to have to adapt one way or another.
Well, it
really doesn't matter what they say.
But he's already, the only adaptation that he really can engage in at this point is to put more troops in again, which I think is politically untenable.
The research?
The research,
Let me ask you this. What kind of military, in terms of their morale, their attitude, their political makeup even, will this new president inherit in addition to the war? Is it a battered and bruised military up at the highest levels from what they've been through with the Bush administration, or is it going to be eager for a new president?
Well, I think they're going to be eager for a new president, a new commander-in-chief. It's hard, each side in the debate can find, anecdotes from Iraq to buttress the argument they want to make. But, if you look at things like whether it's Abu Ghraib or the Walter Reed scandal, you look at, all the unidentified military sources saying that they don't want to see military action in Iran. And the for attribution sources that talk about the military being stretched too thin, it's back nearly breaking. I think the military is pretty darn well stressed out by the war in Iraq, and would like to have a breather in some fashion.
Is it possible for a new president to provide that breather?
Time out. Let's have a time out.
I don't know. Yeah, I'd have to somebody with who can offer something like a new direction. I think would be harder for McCain just because of where he is tactically in the campaign right now, where he's running on Iraq, essentially a sort of reformulated version of where Bush is, and Obama and Hillary who are
because the Democrats
elsewhere who have a much better chance. I mean, I think Obama has the greatest potential for re-energizing American foreign policy. The really remarkable thing was, Hillary during the debate and what she said about the massive retaliation against Iran, committing the United States to protecting every country in the Middle East other than Iran. That's a rather remarkable new American foreign policy doctrine that comes from where and to whom would she look for? Does it matter?
To come from a Democrat.
To come from a Democrat. Does it matter whether we would have coalition partners in this war against Iran?
This obliteration.
Does it matter whether Congress would support it? All the mistakes that we chronicled about Iraq, is she going to repeat them with Iran?